So then you move forward, right? We're going up the timeline back to the outrage marketing. Now you can speculate whether Richard used to be that person. You can speculate anything that you really want around it. But outrage marketing is a form of doing something to promote yourself that doesn't involve managerial and entrepreneurial efforts, but you still grasp the attention of audiences, right? So regardless of what somebody's saying about you, if they're talking about you, it's working, right? So like if you wanted an example, for instance, of something in relation to that, you look at people like Elon Musk, a really massive name in the world, right? Elon Musk doesn't pay for marketing because why would he? Like Tesla does, blah, blah, blah. But like Elon Musk, for instance, is a little bit smarter than that. So what would he do if he really wanted to garner the attention of the world? Well, he put a bulletproof car on stage that claimed to be bulletproof. And mind you, obviously they did build bulletproof cars, right? I'm not denying that he definitely did. But he put a so-called bulletproof car up on stage, gave a man a heavy weight and said, throw it at the car, it won't break. In front of the whole entire world, the car's like windscreen broke on TV, right? Everybody in the entire world, every news channel, every article, every newspaper was talking about Elon Musk because he put this thing up on stage claiming it to be unbreakable and bulletproof, and it broke on stage. No amount of money in the world can get you that type of advertising, that type of marketing campaign, and that type of attention, right? So that's a form of somebody not paying for marketing, but having the whole entire world looking at them. So then you look back at Richard Hart. And again, you can hate the outrage marketing, or you can just look at it and go, he got a lot of attention, right? A lot of it was hate, but there was attention. And then you move forward to Pulsechain, right? So the other things in the SEC letter is they put Pulsechain and Hex back into it. So when you're looking at Pulsechain, right, how do you try to deem Pulsechain a security? So it's like Hex, right? Don't look at necessarily things around it. Look at the asset itself for a second. Pulsechain has 37 now thousand community-run validators, right? Those validators are spread all across the world. They're not just based in America. They're not just based in Australia or one central country. So the SEC cannot just walk in and say everybody has to shut it down in America. They're home run PCs. Okay, you can't go around the world and turn them off. The initial validators that Pulsechain was launched with have gone offline. So it is completely and utterly community run and decentralized. You can't actually stop it. What else would make Pulsechain a security? Well, entrepreneurial and managerial efforts. So what do you see in other L1 launches that you don't see in Pulsechain? Well, the biggest one is grant programs. Now, that is a managerial and entrepreneurial effort of a blockchain foundation to pay people to build on their chain. That is the definition of a so-called security, because that foundation and that blockchain put in the effort for people to have expectations of the work of them. Okay, so it goes back to no expectations of the work of others. It literally means those types of things, right? So any blockchain, so to speak, underneath the SEC's law that goes out and puts out a grant program and pays people to build on chain, that gives their people that are buying assets on to do with their blockchain expectations of them, right? Expectations of profit from them for their efforts. Pulsechain doesn't have that again, right? Pulsechain is completely grassroots and community driven. Pulsechain's community goes out and gets people to build on chain. Pulsechain's community builds on chain. Pulsechain's community runs the validators that runs the entire network, right? PulseX, for instance. Well, anybody can pop open a front end for PulseX, right? So when you're looking at no expectations of the work of others for profit, everybody comes to crypto for profit, right? Like, that's not what's in question. Everybody is here to make money. Anybody that says otherwise is just fooling themselves and trying to fool you, right? Everybody is here to make money. That's not what the SEC really cares about. The SEC wants to try and deem you a security somehow to have control over you, right? To dictate people underneath you, to put fear out there. So all that you need to keep putting back in question is, how do things get deemed a security? And that's when people put money into a common pool with the expectations of work of others, right? So again, if you put money into a pool and those people that you gave money to promised that they would go out and do a grant program for you, that they promised that they would go reinvest your funds to give you a return, that they promised that they would go out and do marketing efforts with that money that you gave them. They are expectations. They are what working means, right? That is what putting money into a common pool with other people with the expectations literally defines, right? So we don't have that. Then you go back to managerial efforts. We don't have that. Richard doesn't do a single thing for us or the community, right? And some people get mad about that. And some people say, mean things about that and say that he should do things. But no, he shouldn't, because what he's been doing for the last 3.5 years is protecting our community, right? He tells us what we can do to make things better. He tells us what we can do to get attention, right? So you see out on Twitter people saying that Richard sent hundreds of letters to people's houses. Well, that's completely and utterly false, because Richard would never work for us. Richard would never bother doing that. But he would sit on stream and say, do you want to know what works really well for marketing? Direct marketing. And do you know what the community would do? Go out and do a bunch of direct marketing, right? So you can give great advice. You can give ideas to people, because that's not actually doing work for anybody, right? That's just talking and sharing in discussion. Working for people is when you go out and do it yourself. That is when you have expectations of the work of other people, right? So everybody takes clips of Richard Hart on YouTube and takes it out of context. And for me, that is one of the most hilarious things that I see on Twitter, because him giving a community advice on how to be better, that's great. Like, if anybody has advice, I think anybody should share it, right? And thank you for sharing. But getting mad that he hasn't done a single thing for us, I'm sorry, but that is what defines us to everybody. And that's what defines us with the SEC. We do not have expectations of him. He will never work for us, and we know that he never will. He never has, and he's not going to start today, right? And then you go play with the sacrifice addresses, right? Because obviously they're going to come into question. Well, it's a little bit like the Hex Howey, right? The Hex Howey has never sold a coin. Say, for instance, the SEC wanted to pinpoint the OA for some whatever reason, right? And wanted to really target it. One of the reasons why the whole entire crypto space needs to get behind Hex, right? And the OA, for instance, right? Because the OA has never sold a coin. It has never given expectations to anybody. It has never acted in a sense where it gave people the expectation of profit. And it's never acted in the sense where it paid for marketing. It didn't pay for shills. It didn't pay for anything, right? It just staked some tokens to reduce the APY, so to protect Hex, but it never sold a coin. Now, if Hex had any issues with the SEC over that OA, that's when a massive issue comes across the entire crypto space. Look at Vitalik, for instance, right? Now, I adore Ethereum, so let's not take my words out of context again, right? Like, I actually really love Ethereum. Vitalik sells the top every year. Literally. I have shared on my Twitter before the last time he sold the top, and he sits on stream and he literally giggles about it, saying, yeah, I got the Ethereum Foundation to sell the top. Okay. He has said that on camera, not I sold the top on the day. I got the Ethereum Foundation to sell the top. Okay. The Hex OA has never sold a coin. The ETH Foundation sells the top. They sell coins every cycle. that is technically, crossing borders. Okay, Chainlink sells the top, right? So if you want to do blockchain analysis, you want to take other people's words and actions and what their wallets have done, you get into really risky territory. And that's what I kind of say when I sit on my Twitter and say Hex actually kind of defines a lot. And I'm not just saying like because XRP made this huge wave. XRP made a huge wave for blockchains, right? For decentralization. But Hex has so many different points where it beats the SEC, it fails the Howey test, and it stops the SEC from taking it for a security, right? But say, for instance, worst case scenario, which I don't think can happen personally, right? But say worst case, it did take Hex for being a security. Hex fails every single point of the Howey test. So if Hex was deemed a security, the whole entire crypto space is screwed, right? It has never paid for a centralized exchange listing. It launched complete, a fully complete product, immutable, no admin keys, right? There was no wallet address that divvied out tokens. It was a contract. Even the contract between the Hex contract and the flush address was a public call function, right? There was no like wallet with an admin key that allowed them to get in there and get the ETH out of the Hex contract. It was a public call function, which is completely decentralized, right? Because anybody could have called it. The Hex OA has never sold a coin. So again, when you're looking at Hex and you're looking at the crypto space as a whole, you run into risky territory, right? So when I look at Twitter again, I find it absolutely hilarious to me when people sit there and they wish for the death of Hex and they wish for it to be deemed a security just based off their pure dislike for Richard Hart. But they cannot comprehend the gravity of what it would actually entail for the whole entire crypto space if Richard did have Hex deemed as his security. Like it is massive and people need to understand that. And then going back to sacrifices. Back in 2020, Richard 2019 when it launched, he talks about the adoption amplifier. He says on stream, no expectations. If you sacrifice, like he doesn't say sacrifice, if you send money to the adoption amplifier, your ETH is gone. He says, don't have any expectations of where it goes. None at all. No expectations of me. If you put ETH into the adoption amplifier, it's done. It's gone. You never see it again. He's sacrificed for Pulsechain. No expectations of the work of others. If you send money, you send coins to the address, you have no expectation, you'll never see it again. PulseX address. If you send coins there, have no expectations, you'll never see it again. Right? So those are the things that are in question. Whether people can try and speculate and put additional things onto the side of it, they're most welcome to come up and try and put additional things onto the side of it. But there really isn't much in the sense of actually deeming an asset a security, right? So maybe something was done in an improper way, right? But how do you actually deem some action that took place? How do you deem an asset a security when it's completely decentralized? Because you can't, because you have to separate the asset itself. Hex can't really be deemed a security, and it would be rather funny to me if they even got to the point where it could be. Because again, it is truly decentralized. It was launched decentralized. It's immutable. It's untouchable. It's had flawless uptime for 3.5 years. Nothing gone wrong with it. It doesn't take your money, right? And then people say, well, everybody that invested lost money. That's completely untrue, right? Like even back to the market making days between V1 and the adoption amplifier. You find me one person that participated in that adoption amplifier, right? That couldn't have sold for profit. Like go on the blockchain and find me one that couldn't have sold for profit. Because after the adoption amplifier, Hex went on to do 1000x, right? From the price of the adoption amplifier, not the price from the bottom. The price from the bottom did a 10,000x, right? Because it did take a dump after. But find people that participated in the adoption amplifier that couldn't have sold for a profit somewhere because they could have, right? So again, when you're going back to every aspect that people bring up, you go into price. Well, Hex is down 98%. Okay, at the bottom of a bear market, anybody that says Hex is dead because it's down, every altcoin's down, right? If you were running victory laps in a bull market and a token was down 95%, then I'm probably going to pay attention to you.